So we have a question that is question number 5, that is of December 2020, and that question is that Chetan Lal had borrowed a hundi, a sum of rupees 25,000 by way of a bearer check on 11 September 2019 and repaid the same with interest in total amounting to 30,000 rupees by account pay check on 12 December 2019. Now, Section 69D of the Income Tax Act basically provides that where any amount is borrowed on a hundi form or an amount due thereon is repaid to any person otherwise than through an account pay check drawn on a bank, the amount so borrowed or repaid shall be deemed to be the income of the person borrowing or repaying the amount aforesaid for the previous year in which the amount was so borrowed or repaid. For the purpose of this section, now the amount repaid shall include the amount of interest paid on the amount borrowed. In this case, basically, Mr. Chetan Lal had borrowed 25,000 rupees on hundi by way of a bearer check. Now, therefore, it shall be deemed to be an income of Mr. Chetan Lal for the previous year 2019 to 2020. However, the repayment of the same along with interest was made by way of account pay check, and the same should not be hit by the provision of 69D of the Income Tax Act. Therefore, the action of assessing officer is not valid here. So, in the law, to the extent of the treatment, the amount repaid by account pay check as income during the previous year 2019-20. Now we have another question, that is now we have another question. Now the concept of permanent establishment, PE, is important to in determining the tax implication of cross-border transactions. Now we have to examine the significance of permanent establishment, and also that when these transactions are governed by the double taxation avoidance agreement. So DTAA के बारे में हमें इसमें थोड़ा सा मेंशन करना है. Like the double taxation avoidance agreement, we know that it generally contains an article providing the business income is taxable in the country of residence unless the enterprises has the permanent establishment in the country of source. Now such income can be attributed to the permanent establishment. Now as per section 92F 333A of the Income Tax Act, the permanent establishment means, and it includes a fixed price place of business through which a business of an enterprise is wholly or partly carried on. कि भाई permanent establishment के through सारा business या partly carried out हो रहा है. This means to constitute a permanent establishment, there must be a place of business which is fixed, and the business of the enterprise must be carried out wholly or partly through that place. Okay, so section 9 that comes into the picture, section 9 subsection 1 clause I of the Income Tax Act 1961 requires that existence of business connection for deeming business income to accrue or arise in India. Double taxation avoidance agreement, however, provide that business income is taxable if there is a permanent establishment in India. Means अगर कोई permanent establishment India में है, then that section attracts and they need to pay tax in India. Now how and when the unilateral advance pricing agreement entered into and be converted into a bilateral agreement. Means when the unilateral advance pricing agreement converted into the bilateral advance pricing agreement. So basically a unilateral advance pricing agreement can be converted into a bilateral advance pricing agreement before mutually agreed draft agreement is forwarded by DGIT, that is International Taxation, to the board. While converting a unilateral advance pricing agreement application to the bilateral advance pricing agreement application, the applicant or associated enterprise needs to make a similar request with the competent authority of other country. Now the bilateral request of the applicant shall be forwarded by the TGIT of the competent authority in India. Now the competent authority of India shall decide whether the bilateral request is allowable based on the existence of appropriate provisions on line of the OECD model, that is Article 9 Subarticle 2 in the text treaty between the India and other country, and also on the existence of advanced pricing agreement program in that country. If the request is allowed, then the application would be processed as bilateral advanced pricing application. I know that this question is more tricky and there would be hardly chance to get that this similar would appear into examination again. Now we have fifth question, that is D part, that is what is the legislative intent or objective to bringing into existence the provision of relating to transfer pricing in relation to the international transaction. Means what is the law behind, what is the logic behind in relation to the TP in case of international transaction, and what is the statement of income tax in this context. So the presence of multinational enterprise in India and their ability to allocate profits among enterprise within the group of Now the presence of multinational enterprise in India and their ability to allocate profits among the enterprise within the group in their different jurisdiction or controlling price in intra-group transactions in such a way that there may be either no profit or negligible profit in the jurisdiction which taxes of such profit and substantial profit will be in the jurisdiction which is the tax haven or where the tax liability of such profit is minimum. I'm again reading this, that the presence of multinational enterprise in India and their ability to allocate profits among enterprises within the group in different jurisdiction by controlling prices in the intra-group transaction in such a way, because in the multinational enterprises what has happened that they have a different countries and they have a different businesses in all of the countries, so what they can do that they can allocate their profit in such a way that basically उस यूनिट से वो लोग ज़्यादा प्रॉफिट शो कर सकते हैं where the tax liability is nil or tax liability is minimum. So this may adversely affect the country share due to revenue loss. Definitely share of revenue. The profit derived by such enterprise carrying on in India can be controlled by multinational groups by manipulating the price exchange and paid in such intra-group transactions, which may lead to erosion of tax revenue. So ये अभी तक इन्होंने फालतू की बातें लिखी है यहाँ पे. Now therefore the transfer pricing provisions have brought in by the Finance Act 2001 with a view to provide statutory framework which can lead to competition of reasonable and fair equitable profits in India in case of multinational enterprises. ऑब्जेक्टिव यही था कि भाई जो प्रॉफिट उठा रहे हैं वो नहीं उठा पाए. नाउ द असेसिंग ऑफिसर कैन कंप्लीट द असेसमेंट ऑफ इनकम फ्रॉम इंटरनेशनल. देयर इज़ नो चॉइस इन दिस क्वेश्चन ना, सो वी नीड टू अटेम्प्ट दिस क्वेश्चन एट एनी हाउ. So here another question is that the assessing officer can complete the assessment of income from international transaction is in disregard of order passed by the TPO by accepting the content of the SSC. Basically, the assessing officer can complete the assessment of income by TPO भी जा सकता है ना उस केस में, ट्रांसफर प्राइसिंग ऑफिसर. Okay, so the answer is that the section 92CA, we don't have to remember all such answers, only company law के आंसर sections याद हो जाए वही काफ़ी है. We can write that as per IT Act. Okay, 1961 also we need to write full. Provides that the order of transfer pricing determining the arm length price of an international transaction is binding on the assessing officer. Now the assessing officer shall proceed to compute the total income from the international transactions in conformity with the arm length price as determined by the TP officer. Therefore, the assessing officer cannot complete the assessment of income from international transactions in this regard of the order of the TP officer and on the basis of content raised by the SSC. Now we have another question, that is question number 6, and this question is that examining in the context of the provision contained under Income Tax Act in each of the following independent cases and state in brief whether there exists business connection in each of the cases in India and so as to bring the income earned in the previous year, if any, taxed in India, that okay, टैक्स होगी, इनकम में नहीं होगी. सो क्या होगा, अल रहीम लिमिटेड बेसिकली अ कंपनी रेजिडेंट इन दुबई. ओके, अल रहीम बेसिकली एक रेजिडेंट है, उसका लाइसेंस ऑफिस है मुंबई में, एंड इट रिसीव्स ट्रेड इंक्वायरी फ्रॉम कस्टमर्स इन इंडिया. And the work of the license office is not restricted for forwarding the trade inquiries to the company in Dubai, but also to negotiate and enter into contract on behalf of the Al Rahim with the customers in India. बस ऐसा नहीं करता कि वो एक जगह से पार्टी ले कॉन्ट्रैक्ट दूसरी जगह करती है, उसको काम भी करता है उसके ऊपर. So in that case, what would be your answer here? That the income accrue or arising directly or indirectly from any business connection in India is chargeable to tax in India as per section 9 subsection 1 clause I of the Income Tax Act. In the given case, Al Rahim, a non-residence company and having a license officer in India, which is having authority to negotiate also and to conclude the contract on behalf of the non-resident company. So as per the explanation of the Income Tax Act, there exists a business connection and therefore the income of the license officer located in Mumbai shall be taxable in India in the hand of Al Rahim. So what is the logic behind it? Because all income accruing, changing the color, that all income accruing arising directly or indirectly through any business connection in India chargeable in India. Okay. So accrue हो रही है इसमें इंडिया के अकॉर्डिंग. नाउ वी हैव अनदर क्वेश्चन, दैट इज जॉन मोलर पीटी इंक, प्रेसिडेंट्स कंपनी ऑफ USA, INC basically, has set up a branch office at Delhi for the purpose of purchase of various materials which are being used for manufacturing its product. Now the branch office is engaged in selling the product of manufacturing, okay, and also providing the sales related service to the customers in India on behalf of the joint. I think similar answer we could write in this context also, that the branch office of John Mueller Pty Inc. located in Delhi constitute a business connection in India. It constitutes a business connection in India as per the Income Tax Act. Since there is an element of continuity in the business transactions with the USA based company John Mueller Pty Inc., the branch office, besides the purchase of raw material, is also engaged in selling the products manufactured by the company and in providing sales related services to the customers in India on behalf of USA company. Now the branch is considered as an extended arm of the company and a permanent establishment in India. Therefore, in case of the profit attributable to the operations conducted in India by the branch will be taxable in India in the hand of. So the answer is that the profits attributable to the operations conducted in India by the branch will be taxable in India. So this is the only answer of this question. This is the only important line here. So first important line is that when a certain company is located in India and constitute a business connection in India as per Income Tax Act, since there is an element of continuity of business transaction, then it considered as PE, and also the profit attributable to the operations conducted in the Indian branch will be taxable in India. So another question we have, that is question number D. See, that is Rajendra. okay, a resident in India based at Noida, okay, is appointed as agent by CKOK Pty Inc., a company incorporated in USA. Okay, एक इंडियन रेजिडेंस है, बेस्ड एट नोएडा है, और एक एजेंट के तरीके से वो काम कर रहा है यूएसए के लिए फॉर एक्सप्लोरिंग द इंडियन मार्केट, एंड ही हैड नॉट बीन गिवन एनी अथॉरिटी टू एक्सेप्ट द ऑर्डर बट वॉज अलाउड फॉर canvassing the order and then to communicate the same to the company in USA. Okay, so all the orders were directly received and accepted by the company after receiving the price value thereof. Now the delivery of goods was given directly by the company for any of its outlet outside India. Now none of the activities, either of purchase of raw materials also or for manufacturing of finished goods, took place in India. Agent was entitled to receive the commission as a percentage on sale. So concluded. So what would be your answer here in this case? Just give me a moment. So the answer in this case is that all income that is accruing or arising directly or indirectly through or any business connection in India is chargeable to tax in India as per section 9. We have already read this case. In case of Rajendra, Mr. Rajendra does not have any authority to accept or conclude any business or contract on behalf of the company to procure any raw material also. So all the directors were directly received and accepted by the company and values thereof receiving the price also. Now the delivery of good was given directly by company from any of its outlet outside India. That means that business connection does not exist in India. In case of COK Pty, the income of the work done by the agent shall not be taxable in the hands of COK Pty Inc. of the USA. Now the commission of sales received by Rajendra shall be taxable in India. Commission taxable hogi, but income shall not be taxable. So we have another question, that is part B of the same question, that is explain the taxability of otherwise or the following transactions entered into during the previous year. Taxability basically we need to check out. So Nistha, a member of her father, HUF, transferred a house property owned by her to HUF of her father without taking any consideration. Now the stamp duty value of the house properties were transferred on the date, that is of 15 lakhs, and the properties were transferred by given on the rent of HUF. So what would be your answer here in this case? So this is the answer of this case, that it is non-taxable. Why it is so? Because the non-immovable property received without consideration by HUF from any of its members covered under the definition of relative, and therefore it is not taxable. Okay, so the Nistha is a member of HUF and she is also a relative of her father's HUF. Okay, and hence the stamp duty of the house is not taxable, and income of rent deprived from such transfer of the house property of HUF would be clubbed in the hands of Nistha. That could be clubbed, but it is not taxable. Now we have another part, second, that is Akshat received 1000 shares as a gift of ATOS Limited having face value of 10 rupees each from his friends on occasion of 25th marriage anniversary, and the fair market value on the date of gifts of the shares of A to Z was limited was of 100 rupees per share. He also receives a car from his nephew on the same day, and fair market value of the car of the gift was assessed to 5,25,000 rupees. Now we have to determine that it is taxable or not. Yes, it is taxable. How much is it taxable? 1 lakh rupees. What was the reason? Because as per the Income Tax Act, in case of aggregate fair market value of the property other than the immovable property received without consideration exceeds 50,000, the whole of the aggregate value shall be taxable. Means agar within the 50,000 limit hota, then there is no need to pay tax because that could be considered as a gift. So in this case, the aggregate fair market value of shares is of 1 lakh rupees. That is of more than 50,000. So the entire amount has to be taxable here. So car is not included in the definition of the property for the purpose of section 56. Okay, so therefore the value of the same shall not be taxable, and rest 4 to 5 questions from this C part we'll do in another lecture. Thank you.